Hi, I'm Psiman and welcome to vlog number 33. And obviously there's going to be a lot to talk about because it's been a long time since my last video, so grab yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, whatever your favorite beverage is, and settle in. Now obviously, with it being such a long time since my last video, I'm going to be speaking about what I've been doing since then. As you can see, I'm back in my study or games room in the UAE, and yeah, I've got a few things to talk about. Also, because I haven't been on YouTube for a while, there have been a few interesting videos that have been put up by some of you guys that I felt I really want to respond to. So I'm going to take a bit of time to respond to a couple of those. I meant to do it quite a long time ago, but just haven't been in the mood for making videos, so I'm going to do that today. Then I'm going to speak a bit about a game that I've really been absorbed in recently and one that kind of took me by surprise. Finally, at the end, I'm going to speak a little bit about the cats. So if you like them, stick around till the end, or just skip to the end if you're not interested in anything else. So let's get on with it. And what have I been doing recently? Well, quite a bit, I suppose. I've obviously, last time I spoke to you, I was in the UK having a little holiday, seeing family, going to a wedding. Now I'm back in the UAE and it is scorching hot. It's uncomfortably so. I mean, I like warm weather, but this seems even hotter than last summer. I mean, it's regularly in the mid-40s, sometimes even going up into the low 50s centigrade, and it's just really difficult to sit down and make a video in those kind of conditions. I mean, here I've got a couple of lights. I've had to switch off the AC because it's just that bit noisy and annoying, and I don't want to wind you guys up with an annoying whining sound in the background. So I'm going to try and do all this in one take and not have to sweat through it. Yeah, I think gaming wise, well, I'm going to talk about a game in a minute, but I've had some gaming problems recently. My PC did die on me. I've got I think I showed it before, a games machine that I bought specifically for playing VR games. And I bought pretty good components in it, and one of those was the power supply. And I bought a Corsair RM650i. And I thought, well, it comes with a 7-year warranty, that thing is really going to last. Switched my PC on a few days after coming back. It wasn't the first time I'd switched it on since being back, but only a couple of days after returning, and wanted to play a bit of VR because one of the games I like to play is called Bullets and More, and it doesn't have a very big community of gamers who play it, which is disappointing, but Friday nights is a time when they tend to play in Europe, in the States. The problem with that is the time difference. So for me, playing at 9 o'clock Friday night European time is midnight Friday night for me here. The issue with that is I always have to get up early on a Saturday morning to go to work. The other days of the week, Sunday through to Wednesday, I work evenings, late afternoons into the evenings. But on Saturdays, I normally work 9 till about 4. And that's meant that I haven't been able to really get in and play with the main body of the community of this game. But in the summer, my schedule changes and I work what is in the UAE a normal working week. So Sunday to Thursday, 9 in the morning till whatever in the afternoon, 4 or 5. And that means I can play on a Friday night because I've got Saturday off. So I got home and switched my PC on a Friday, thinking, yeah, I'm really going to get in and play some bullets and more, going to have some great competitive multiplayer fun, and the machine wouldn't switch on. So I thought, oh, okay, blown fuse, wasn't that. Took the power supply out, had a look at it, did the tests that were recommended on Corsair's site to see what the problem was, and the thing was just dead. It was making a crackling, sparking sort of noise. Now, as I've had it for more than more than a year, I'm not covered by the warranty, because the warranty only covers you if you buy it from an authorized Corsair dealer. Unfortunately, in Dubai, there aren't any of those, so I just had to take my chances and have the 1-year warranty with the shop that I bought it from. So as it was just out of warranty, I had to go out and buy a brand new power supply, which is annoying because they're not cheap. And I thought, because I bought it all together, I'd kind of forgotten how much each of the individual components was. But I went and looked for a replacement, and it was 495 dirhams, which was just over £100. And then the model up, which was the one that I originally wanted to get, but nowhere at the time had it in stock, the RM750i, was 550, which is about another £12. So as it happened, that's the one that I bought. I've put it in the machine, and the machine is back working again. But I was very kind of slow and lazy to repair my PC. I didn't rush out, and I borrowed my friend's PSVR because he's just, like I've mentioned before, I've got a good friend here who's really into gaming like I am, and like obviously you guys are, and he's moved in just a couple of doors down in the little complex where I live. But he, when he moved in, he didn't have the internet installed, and his internet company were taking their sweet time sorting out his internet connection, had to change to a different internet provider, and so it was taking him a long time, and he wasn't that bothered about playing on his PSVR, so he lent that to me, and I lent him my Vive so he could play a bit of that, as I can't use it with a dead PC. And you might be thinking the game that I'm talking about that I got really absorbed in was a PSVR game, but it wasn't. I was really quite disappointed this sort of second time playing PSVR, because I made a video a while ago that I put on the Gamers Living Room channel, and I said that, you know, the difference between the PSVR and the Vive is, you know, not that great. But after going back and not having the Vive to compare with directly, my experience of playing PSVR and trying to play for an extended period was not such an enjoyable one. I really wanted to play Eve Valkyrie, and that's one of the games my mate has got, so I played a bit of it, and it was a really disappointing experience. I wouldn't say it was nausea-inducing, but it wasn't as comfortable as I remember when I first played it. The game itself is pretty boring. The flight controls are not very good. And I just had a really awful time playing it. I tried a couple of the other demos and didn't find them particularly enjoyable. And so I left the PSVR to the side and played a normal PlayStation 4 title, one that he lent me, and he said, you know, try this. He said he kind of enjoyed it but got bored of it after a few hours, and I thought, well, I haven't got any other new games to play, so I tried this one.
Come on, then.
Well, in case you didn't know, that is Horizon Zero Dawn playing on the standard PlayStation 4. And I've got to say, this game is so much better than what I was expecting. I think I've mentioned in previous videos that I'm not a massive fan of third-person perspective games. I much prefer these types of games first-person. You know, obviously I do enjoy some third-person games like Uncharted, for example. Had a lot of fun playing, well, I have had a lot of fun playing all of those games, but I think if they were first-person games, I would have enjoyed them even more. And the same, honestly, could be said for Horizon Zero Dawn, but I still, even though it's not a perspective that I enjoy playing in, I still loved playing this game. And the main reason was the story. I think the world, really, the world that has been created by Guerrilla Games, that they've managed to make an environment and not pack it full of stuff, but have enough in there so the world feels quite alive. Sure, it does fall down in the same way that so many open world games do, and that's that the impact you have on the world doesn't seem permanent. I mean, I'll mention one of the downsides first, and that's that you can be involved in a combat situation, and then if you run away from it and then return, it's like nothing happened. You know, you don't have to travel too far running away from enemies and then coming back for what you've destroyed to or killed to be brought back to life. And that's a frustrating thing with so many open world games. I honestly dream of the day where they can have a nice open world environment and however you affect it stays. It's got a real permanence to it, and unfortunately it doesn't really have that in this. But that aside, the world is beautifully created. The texture work in it is fantastic. It's as good as anything I've seen on any PC titles. But with that comes a slight problem, and that is that, and I think this is referred to as the uncanny valley. When something looks close to being real, you really notice those small differences that show that it's not. They really stand out. And because the texture work is so nice in this, they've really gone for a photorealistic look. The animation is really shown up.
Did someone forget we were supposed to go hunting this morning?
I think my mind would have been more forgiving of this game if the look they were going for or the quality of the texture work was much lower. I would have forgiven this quite often erratic animation of the characters, and there's quite a disparity between the facial animation of some characters and the facial animation of others, and even unfortunately down the central character can look at times a little bit devoid of not the emotion but the small nuance of I don't really know how to describe it. The way her face conveys the emotion she's feeling doesn't always feel genuine, whereas some other characters, maybe it was just a different team of animators working on it, maybe they use slightly different capture technology, I don't know, but other characters seem a lot more convincing. And obviously with some of the sort of side quest NPCs, I think you can forgive that some of those are a bit shoddy in comparison to the main cast, but it is a bit jarring. It seems like I'm just talking about negatives here. I think for me, they were the only two real negatives. This lack of permanence in the game world and the very noticeable disconnect between animation and texture quality. But the world really captured my imagination. I've always been very curious, and I've often reflected on the idea of, is it reflected or would it be projected? I don't know, but I've ruminated about what will happen to the human race in the future. Will we, thrive and our race goes to the stars, or will we end up killing ourselves off? And so these sort of post-apocalyptic tales have always interested me, and uncovering all the backstory to what happened to the human race was one of the big draws to this game. I really wanted to know what happened, and I avoided, well, actually not deliberately, I just didn't have much of an interest in this game when I first saw screenshots and video footage of it. And I think it might have been the big robot dinosaur things that put me off. I thought it just seemed like nonsense. So I didn't pay any real attention to it. I barely looked at the front cover of the box when I borrowed it off my friend. And it wasn't until I'd completed the game that I looked at the back. And one of the things that I really enjoyed finding out in the game was how long it had been from the point that the human race had ceased, or the human civilization, modern civilization as we know it, had ceased to exist, and this kind of tribal, primitive culture had started. And I would have found that if I'd have just looked at the back of the box, it would have told me that in the blurb about the game, and I'm glad I didn't. And also, there's pictures on the back of a couple of the creatures that are in it that came as a nice surprise when I played the game. So, yeah, I'm definitely one who doesn't like to know, I don't like watching trailers. I've yet to see anything for the new Star Wars movie. I don't really like to know the backstories thing. I like to find them out through watching the movie and playing the games and really digging into the history of this game, the history of the culture that you're part of, the subsequent other small groups that are in it, and also human civilization. Finding out all about that really captivated me. On top of the storytelling in that aspect, the world building, the game's got quite a nice heart to it, because it's about an orphan girl who, just after being born, she is given up for adoption to an outcast of the tribe, and she lives with him as an outcast, and he teaches her the ways of the hunter as their tribe. Their tribe is, they're very much like Native Americans. I think would probably be the closest culture that I could liken them to. And her connection with him is very, very nicely told, but also what drives the story is her wanting to know where she's come from, who her mother is, and it's all intertwined into the main thread of the story, and it does keep the thing plodding along. Well, plodding might be a bit unfair to it, makes it sound a bit slow and pedestrian, but it keeps the plot going, keeps you engaged with the central character. And beyond that, I found it was the side quests as well. So often with these types of open world games, I'm not that interested in doing side quests, because they're normally just go here, get this thing, come back. And admittedly, there are those types of quests. There are quite a lot of them which are go somewhere and investigate and then bring back the information about what you find. Very much like in the Arkham games, some of the side quests where Batman has to go and investigate a crime. Those sort of side quests are in this. Others are some more battle-focused side quests. But I didn't play all of them, but the ones that I did play did seem to wrap a nice narrative around the it's often quite simple task that you have to go and do, and they all feed into the mythos and the culture of the world, and some of them bring with them rewards that are quite useful for other parts of the game. So it's got a very nice central story with a few branches of I don't know whether you can really come out with a different end result. I didn't get that feeling, but there are bits of the game that are central-ish that I think of the bigger quests that you can probably avoid, and then you've got the smaller side quests which you can definitely avoid, and then you've got the main quest that obviously you have to complete to finish the game. But it really kept me involved in it, and yes, obviously not having my Vive, not being able to play VR was one part of why I was so captivated by this game, but I found myself comparing it to Breath of the Wild, because it is a sort of RPG type game. In some ways the plot is similar. You're a hero or heroine in this case, although I suppose Link doesn't feel particularly masculine or feminine. From the one game that I've played, Link feels somewhat androgynous, but the sort of central quest, the big monster, if you will, that you're fighting towards in Breath of the Wild seems somewhat similar to this. But I've had Breath of the Wild for longer than I've had this, and it didn't keep pulling me back, wanting to know more. I wasn't that bothered by the world. I didn't really want to know that much about the story. Admittedly, probably in Breath of the Wild, the game mechanics are a bit better. I really like in Breath of the Wild that you can pretty much climb anywhere you want as long as you've got enough energy to climb up the mountain, whereas there are definite bits in this game where you feel very boxed in. I don't know if you have the same issue with some open world games where they give your character an ability, like climbing, for example, and this girl's like a parkour master. In fact, some of the things she does in this game are ridiculous. I couldn't even imagine that a human being can do them, but hey, it's a fantasy, you suspend your disbelief. But there are sections in the game where you think, oh, well, she could easily climb up this frame or climb over this wall. The game just stops you, It just doesn't make any sense. And I hate it when these worlds they don't feel real because of that. They look real in the textures and the shapes that have been created, the models that are in the world. But then because your character doesn't have the sort of agency that you would expect, being able to climb wherever logically they would be able to put their hands, it really does break immersion might not be the right word because we often use that referring to VR. But what it is, you do get immersed in the world, even though it's not surrounding you in the same way a virtual reality title does. But yeah, it breaks the believability of it, which seems silly considering we're talking about something that's not real here. But maybe I'm not articulating myself particularly well here, or articulating the idea particularly well. But it's a real bugbear of mine. It's one of the things I don't like about a lot of video games, and I understand they've got to put barriers in to stop you going outside the map. They can't build the map forever, but give me a reason that I can understand why I can't go there. Don't just put an invisible wall that I can't climb up, or stop my character from finding handholds on something that looks like they would be able to climb it with absolutely no difficulty. I suppose that's 3 issues I've got with this game. And I'm almost making it sound like I didn't like it. I really, really liked it. And I will definitely be adding this to my collection. I will have to give this back to my friend at some point. And I, for the first time in a long time, have the urge to play the DLC. So often with games, I'll play the DLC if I've bought the Game of the Year edition, but if I buy the vanilla version of a game, most of the time I've got no interest in playing the DLC, whereas this, I'm very interested in it. In fact, and I've mentioned this a few times in the past, that there have been games, first person, third person, whatever, that I've felt the narrative is too long. And I've got near to the end, 2/3 of the way through maybe, and I'm starting to feel bored. And I mentioned it with Uncharted 4. There's a bit of a lull in the middle I didn't really like, but by the end I enjoyed it. Another example might be Doom. Really enjoyed the first 2/3 of that game. I just felt it went on a bit longer than I would like. Tomb Raider, the Tomb Raider reboot. I haven't played Rise of the Tomb Raider, but that one as well felt dragged on a bit longer than I would have wanted. And I understand developers feel the need to make sort of 15, 20 hour narratives because people feel like they've got to get their money's worth for 40, 50, 60 pounds, however much they're paying for it. But this was definitely one game. I think the last game I was really engrossed in it was GTA 5, I think, where I really wanted to play all of the missions and the side quests and really roam around the world. This, although completely different, had the same result, that I wanted to stay in the game world. And in fact, when I finished it, I went right back to the beginning and played the first few hours of it on ultra hard mode, just so I could remember what the beginning of the story was and have a slightly different perspective on it. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend it. If you're thinking like I originally thought, this is not the sort of game I would enjoy, rent it. See what it's like. Play the first 5-6 hours of it, and then if you like it, add it to your collection. Okay, well, I've kind of done this in the wrong order. I was planning to talk about the game after responding to videos from a couple of YouTubers, but well, let's talk about those, because I saw a video, as I say, a couple of them, but the first I'll talk about was Mark Verheer Lactobacillus Prime's video about the state of the video game industry. And I don't want to address every point that's in that video because it was a interesting but very long video. But I do want to talk about a couple of issues, being the kind of the generational cycles of video game consoles and backwards compatibility. And much like Mark, I'm quite a fan of backwards compatibility. And I find it almost an alien concept to not want backwards compatibility. And I know there's a big percentage of console owners who really don't have any interest in it. They just want to move on to the next generation, probably get rid of their old system and sell all of their games and just play the new system. But as someone who has been gaming for a long time and is a bit of a collector, or not in the sense of these hardcore game collectors who want to have massive collections, but I like to keep the games that I've bought. I like to have key or interesting titles from each generation, and I like to keep hold of games that I've enjoyed playing. So as someone who's been a PC and console gamer for more than 20 years, it does seem a bit odd because the PC has always been backwards compatible. Sometimes it's been very difficult to eke that compatibility out of the PC, especially I remember going from the sort of DOS days to Windows 95. There were a lot of problems there, but normally after a bit of tweaking you could get the games to work. And then over the years, backwards compatibility has become easier and easier, now to the point where I can buy something on Steam quite happily that's 20 years old and play it on my system. But on consoles, it seems to be, or at least on Sony's side of things, backwards compatibility is almost a non-issue for them, or they're not interested in it. They're quite happy to sell remastered versions of games from previous systems, or the original title. They're happy to stream it to you through their PlayStation Now service, which I've got no interest in with the spotty internet connection that I've got. I mean, even streaming stuff over my home network using Steam Link is not a great experience. You either take a hit in visual quality or a hit because of the latency. Nah, I'm not going to pay the amount of money they're asking for a subscription to PlayStation Now. Nah, no thanks. Not when I consider the value for money I get from something like EA's, is it called Origin Access on the PC? $3.99 a month, loads of games in the list. You know, what's that? We're looking £40 for £44. No, do the math right. £48 for a year. Or actually, why have I not subscribed for a whole year? I reckon I'm paying a lot more for that. I'll just reminded myself I'm going to check that out, because I'm sure if I sign up for the whole year, I probably save money. But anyway, even at $3.99 a month, I think that's great value for money. And for those of you that haven't used it, they've just recently added Battlefield 1 and Titanfall 2. So 2 pretty good games, and they've obviously got a lot of their older titles. They don't have many of the sports games, which is unfortunate. Some of the older football games, but no UFC. I was a bit disappointed to find the other day I wanted to play UFC 2, but that wasn't on there. But anyway, I digress. Backwards compatibility, I think, is a fantastic thing. I don't want to have separate boxes set up for each generation when the drive in my current PlayStation can technically read PlayStation 3's, Blu-rays, DVDs from PlayStation 2, and those CD type ROM things, whatever they were from the original PlayStation. It can read those discs. So I know this is one of the things I was hoping for when PlayStation Pro came out, to have it fully backwards compatible with PlayStation 3, and then by extension PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1, as the original PlayStation 3 was backwards compatible with both of those. Unfortunately, I never had one of those machines. But you know, you're paying an extra £100 for the new one, and of course that money is going into a better graphics card and a slightly better CPU, but not really much. But I would have happily paid another £100 on top to have it backwards compatible with PlayStation 3 and the older PlayStation systems, which might seem a lot to some of you, but for me, yeah, I'm not saying £100 is something I can throw around and like it's nothing, but to me that would be good value, that I didn't have to go and take out my PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 2 and plug them in whenever I wanted to play a game from one of those systems. The convenience of it, would be good, would be worth the additional cost. Talking of PlayStation Pro, I'm actually going to be buying one of those next month, or at least I think I am. Destiny 2 is coming out, and they're bringing out a white PlayStation Pro. And I mentioned in a previous video the reason I haven't bought a PlayStation Pro is because I want to put it in the front room, and I want it to be aesthetically pleasing because, as I've said, the living room is my wife's domain. She's given up this room to me to have for VR and other gaming. And so, although we do have an Xbox One S and now a Wii U in the front room, they're both white. So, it seems trivial and superficial, but, I've held off on getting a PlayStation 4 Pro until a white one comes out. So I think September 8th or 10th, whenever it is that the new Destiny game comes out, I'll be picking one of those up. And plus, I'm also interested in playing Destiny 2. I did enjoy Destiny until the servers stopped working properly over here and I was getting a bad connection to them. Ah, yes. So, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about regarding Mark's video. And I suppose also kind of connected to it, the idea of console generations and these mid-generational refreshes. Yes, this is another point that if you look back at the graphical fidelity and the kind of simulation or computational power of each generation when it moves up to the next, it seems to have been getting less and less noticeable, or less and less important, the difference between generations. Like PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2 was quite a big difference in graphical power. Jumping from 2 to 3, yeah, you're going up from standard definition to high definition. And of course the graphics were nicer, but I don't really consider the graphical jump as much as between the previous generation. And then going from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 or Xbox 360 to Xbox One, sure, again, a difference in fidelity, but it's not as great, and definitely the difference in simulation. Digital Foundry did an interesting video about this, looking at the complexity of the worlds that were created for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 were really quite interesting worlds that they created. And the jump to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One added more complexity, but not a great deal. And they were speculating about the next generation and that they think there's going to be a bigger bump in CPU power coming because it's needed for the sort of physics and simulation complexity in the work, especially these open world games. And if we look at this mid-generational refresh with the Xbox One X and of course the PlayStation 4 Pro, I don't think the jump for most people really warrants spending twice as much. And I will openly admit that the new Xbox, the hardware they're putting into it is great for a console, and what they're actually offering is pretty good value for money when you compare to a PC of similar specifications. Having a custom built unit that's as small as it is really quite a feat of engineering. But to the average consumer, does a doubling in price justify, or is it justified by the jump to 4K? And admittedly, I do like 4K gaming. The little bit I've done on the PC when plugging it into the television in the front room, but it's still the same game. It's the same game, a bit sharper. Sure, those graphics kind of pop a little bit more. It almost adds a little bit to the depth of them due to the increased sharpness. But I think it's going to be a tough sell when the Xbox One X comes out and they say to the majority of consumers who are not hardcore gamers, they're not really into it, or we're talking about parents buying them for their teenagers or younger children. They can have one box where they can play all of the games on, or they can pay twice as much for a box that plays all the same games but at a slightly sharper image, well, with a slightly sharper image. And depending on how good your eyesight is and how far you sit away from your TV, how large your TV is, you might not even notice that difference. So I think it's a pretty tough sell. And even if you can notice the difference, I think another problem they've got is that at $500, you've got a PlayStation box that does almost the same, which will give you a nice crisp image for $100 less. And I would not be at all surprised to find out much closer to the launch of the Xbox One X that they drop another $50 off of that. So, you know, $499, $349 for the difference in what the Xbox One X will offer. I think it's going to be a hard sell. I really do. As good as the system is, as good value as it is for the actual hardware that's being put in it, what it represents to the average consumer, I don't think they're going to see it as good value at all. But we shall see. You know, I hope for Microsoft's sake that I'm wrong. Okay, now let's move on to one more video that I'd like to respond to, and that is something that has been uploaded by Dave, Lawnboys Post 1975, where he asked the question, does the effect of the retro gaming community have a negative effect on retro game collecting, or something to that effect? And I believe that this was a video response to someone else's video, and I'll link both those videos below if it is in fact somebody else's video he was responding to, and I will do the same with regards to Mark Vahir's video as well. But, you know, what I think regarding this issue of the retro gaming community's effect on retro game collecting is that overall, I think it has a positive effect, because the more people that are interested in retro games, the higher the price of those retro games is going to be. And that may be bad for you if you're one of these collectors who just wants to get everything for themselves. But if you're someone who likes to keep their collection and see the value of it grow, then you're going to want more interest in the video games that you've got. There's a finite amount of original solid state media or disc media or whatever format it comes on. So, and those break and die over time. So that whatever you've got, as long as it's in good condition, should, as long as that interest in video gaming continues, it's going to increase, isn't it? And yes, it does mean if you want to acquire new games, the cost of those is going to go up. But then, as long as the continued interest is there, they're either going to hold their value or they're going to increase in value. So I think the people who are complaining about it are ones that really loved the days when they could pick up things that to them are really valuable. Being a gamer, good video games hold quite a value. And when you could go to a car boot sale or a flea market or a yard sale, whatever you call them in your area, and pick up, I don't know, something like Homeland? On the Super Nintendo for 50 pence, you're going to be really happy. But a lot of people want that game, so it's going to cost you a damn sight more than that these days. So, you know, I'm pretty happy that there's a lot of interest in video gaming. It means there's a lot of people to chat with about it, and I'm interested in retro because I am old and retro, and it means there's going to be a lot of other people to chat about it. I think it's a really nice thing that the younger generation is interested in playing old video games and going back and exploring the history of video gaming. You know, it's quite a cool thing as my nieces and nephews grow up, that they'll probably want to talk with Uncle Psiman about his video game collection rather than thinking it's something weird having all these old games. They might actually see some real value in a lot of the great platforming and shoot 'em up games of yesteryear. So yeah, I'm pretty happy that there is a real interest in video gaming, and the little collection that I've got is going to maintain or increase in value over time. So, you know, I'm happy about that. If there ever was a day when I needed to or wanted to sell my video game collection, it's actually worth something. So I'm happy about that. Okay, so that's they are my responses to a couple of interesting videos. Obviously, I've seen lots of other interesting videos, and some of them I might respond to in the future, and I should try and make a concerted effort to make single videos to respond to those, because I know, you know, not everybody likes these long videos. And well, I will mention that I'm going to be making some short videos coming out soon, and this kind of links to a video I saw yesterday. Again, it was Lawn Boy's post talking about it, about why some of your videos are popular and others are not. And I've noticed looking through my videos that my kind of Let's Play videos, my How Far on One Life series of videos, are not very popular. And I can totally see why. I don't particularly like watching Let's Play videos either, but I really enjoy making those videos. So, you know, for the handful of you that do enjoy watching those, there's going to be a couple more of those coming out soon. Also, I've got another new mouse, so I'm going to do a little review and comparison with the current gaming mouse that I've got. So that will be coming out as a separate video. I'm still planning to make some videos about virtual reality. I've been saying for a long time I'm going to do sort of single standalone videos talking about some of my favorite games, and I'll be doing a Vive Oculus comparison because my good friend across the road has just got an Oculus Rift and picked one up in the $399 bundle that Oculus have been offering in their Summer of Rift sale. And I played on it a little bit last night, and I have to admit, I think it's, you know, to cut to the quick of it, if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of space to play VR, you can't beat the Rift. It's much better than the Vive. It's much more comfortable. The build quality of it's better. The controllers are so much better than those Vive ones. The only real downside to it is you can't move around in a lot of space. You need a third camera. He's had some problems with setting it up. It's a bit more, although the setup software is really good, it's been a bit more of a hassle than setting up the Vive. But I've been really impressed with it. Oh, and the headphones on it are fantastic. I really didn't think they'd be that good, but they definitely beat out the headphones that I've bought, or the earphones that I've bought for my Vive. I've got a pretty good pair of in-ear Bose headphones, but the built-in ones in the Rift are fantastic. And the games as well for it. Robo Recall, that is a very cool title. So I'll be talking a bit more about that in a bit more detail in a standalone video. And there's probably other stuff that I can't think of at the moment that I'll be doing. As I said, a couple of gamers' living room videos I'm going to be planning and making next month because I'll have a bit more time then. So to the last thing that I want to mention, and as I said at the beginning of the video, cats. You know, I've mentioned before how much I love my two little kitties, and well, I had Berman for a long time, and then, as you might know, we got a second cat last year, a little Persian British blue crossbreed called Bella, and she is an adorable little cat. Problem was, with her being a Persian, she's got a slightly longer coat and it has a bit of a tendency to get matted. So my wife decided, well, we'll take her to one of the grooming places near here and have a bit of a trim, get rid of those knots. And I was like, oh yeah, well that sounds like a really good idea. Obviously with summer coming and being here now, it's more uncomfortable having longer hair. So she took little Bella off to the grooming place and came back with this. I mean, what the hell? She's now, or was, because it's grown back now to some extent, not completely, but she was some kind of lion. And oh, I just laughed so much when I first saw it. I thought it was at the same time terrible and funny, and I really didn't like it at first. I thought it was just ridiculous, but man, she's so soft. That short coat was like velour. It was really, really freaky weird. But it only took me a couple of days to get used to it. And then I thought, oh, she's kind of adorable, this cute little lion thing running around. And now her coat's grown in a bit better. It's not quite back to the full length it was before, but having it cut and now it's grown back, it really looks nice. So yeah, she's a cute little thing. So anyway, enough about cats and games and gaming and what I've been up to. I'm going to leave you now, so hopefully I haven't bored you too much. Thanks for sticking around to the end. So from my spare room to wherever you are, this is Psiman, sweating and signing off. Bye-bye.